Alright, so like many of my videos, this is not super well planned out, but I have a general theme I'd like to talk about, and I have 5 example games, and we'll see how well I can bring it all together. But I sort of want to talk about how the standard move 5 structures, specifically the T, the Q, and the S or Z, how by creating these pairing of squares, can be much quicker and more precise to calculate, and getting used to calculating those quickly and well, and showing some examples where they are very quick to calculate, and how a good player can see it from a way off because it is going to be so quick to calculate how that line works. So in this game, this is from a chat tournament. My opponent Fusion Cloud had a very poor hand, and I think this was a difficult situation. We'd drawn a bunch of games when he had usable hands. This hand was pretty unusable. I think the opposite corner play against a corner you can't deal with and you can't really set up against is a very viable strategy, and probably the kind of best default choice, where don't know what to do, stick something in the opposite corner, is probably the thing that's going to create the most play. And one reason for that is it's difficult. So I've created safety in 7. He doesn't have safety anywhere, and he doesn't have a way to set up against my safety. But this is a move that won't give me a second safety if I don't already have it. Here I do, but we'll get to that in a sec. And it doesn't give me squares to play in as easily that won't surrender some kind of safety, right? If I stick any card in 9, suddenly he does have a way to get safety if he wants it a few different ways. And that's true for a lot of squares, which is why 5 is one of the default moves. But it's one of those things that creates a situation where it's hard for me to get more safety, and I can potentially concede safety, right? If I go here, which is a very natural move and is what I played, he does have this option of safety, right? And similarly, if I go here, he's got this option of safety. And he's got other things to do as well. I was suspecting he might go here, because 3-1-2-6 is now set up in both 5 and 1. We don't have to spend a lot of time on the early game. It's not really part of my theme. I end up going here. I expected him to go either here or here. These seemed the two most natural moves to me, but I also thought he was conceding a lot of directional power by doing so, and I should be able to find a way to press, though I believe I thought they both led to ties with correct play. Instead, he felt clearly didn't want to use up a card with this much power, and went with 3-1-2-6 in 2. And here is a position where we can set up a structure, right? We can set up a Z specifically. And the question is, do the Z's work, and which Z's work? And this is, I think, a very straightforward one to look at because there's a couple factors. One is, any move in 5 will make my card in 8 safe. My card in 8 was safe, then he played in 2. Now he is a threat in 5, but if I block 5, my card in 8 is safe. If we look at the cards I could potentially put in 5, anything except 2-6-2-5, and my card in 7 will also be safe. So I will have these 2 safe cards. Also, if I take 2, he can recapture, but if he does recapture, it's very difficult for me not to have a capture on that. So that is close to being mine. But we also know, if I play in 5, of the 3 cards I've put down, the only one he can take is in 5. This is going to be useful, I think. So we can look at any of the 3 cards there, but the one that just obviously jumped out to me, I think, was this. Captures the card in 2. Locks in the card in 8. Does not set him up in 4. And this card has a lot of up-down power, right? The 2 paired squares, what are the most important directions to have in these paired squares? Well, ability to capture is really useful, but for me, I'm not looking to capture the cards in that middle row, right? For his cards, it matters whether he can flip these from the sides. For my cards, it more matters whether, when he does flip my cards, whether I can capture them back, right? So I'm going to want to keep an up-down card. So the two cards I looked at were this in 5 and this in 5. This one's going to be much harder to calculate because it sets him up in 4, and it's probably just terrible on that basis because he flips a whole lot of things that I can't flip back. I should say there's no plus wall. So if he did go here, I believe I left plus wall turned on, so it claims to capture back, but it would not have captured back in the game. So my bad, putting in the rules. So I was really just immediately drawn to this move, but I also think this move is very easy to calculate out whether it wins. If I'm holding on, I need to sort of consider each of the paired squares and whether I get a plus or minus there. Any move he makes in one of these squares either doesn't capture, in which I'm at least running even on the left, or captures one card. And against that, either of my cards capture back, right? Either of my cards, this one has the same to capture back. And this is true for this square too. Either of my cards, of course, capture back. So I'm necessarily running even over here. Now, it is important to check that both cards run fine there, because it means I can use either one over here on the right. So one thing to do can be to be like, I have this card for these two squares and this card for these two, and say, okay, in this case, I know 2625 is going to cover these squares. It's going to run at least even against anything, because my 2625 can capture this in either square, including combo it in one of them, and if they play in any other square, it can't take, but it can take here, but it can't take here, but it at least they don't get any captures, so I know I'm running even on the left. And I know I can do that with the 2625, which frees up the 4261, which is my more powerful card for the right side of the board. On the right, if they don't capture, now, let's say they don't capture this way, I'm at least going even, but in fact, there's no way I'm not capturing at least one thing if they don't capture, because my 4261 can capture anything in 6, and if they go in 9, even if they go with the safe card, again, plus wall is not on, my move in 6 captures the card in 3. The only way they can run even is if they take my card in 5, and I know I will then run even. So I know I'm getting an even in the bottom right, and I'm going at least even in the bottom right, and I'm going at least even in the top left pair of squares. I don't have to calculate any further because I've taken a 6-4 lead, and I know I can run even in any combination of squares that are played. As was played out, he ended up playing 2-5, 3-5, and 6. I took it and comboed because of a plus, and went in 1, just trying to lose in most dramatic fashion once it was realized it was lost. You know, there was nothing to be done there. But what I want to emphasize is in this position, I saw, okay, my 2625 controls 1 and 4. My 4261 controls 6 and 9. I am up on score. All I need to do is run even in both remaining squares. I know I run at least even, so I know this must be a win. And so this was the first move I looked at, but I didn't have to look at any other moves because it jumped out at me. Oh, I have a same in 5, and that locks in 8, and that because it blocks his threat in 5, and he has very few captures after that. But it was also really easy to calculate because I could divide the squares into pairs. There was nothing where I had to see, if he goes 1, I have to play a move in 9, and I have combos both ways. There was none of that here. It was just, I could see the paired squares. If he plays 1 or anything, I'm always taking back here, and then I'm always taking back here, right? And I'm always going to at least end up 1, and often more as seen in the game. So I'm going to switch to a game that's not from me. This is the mysterious Jaguar Paw playing Midas. And I think actually this game did not enter the formation, but I was looking at the formation because I thought it was a nice example. And I was thinking of making this video, and I thought it was a neat game for that because there was something quick to calculate. So we have a 9 starter, a strong adjacent square with the point that Jaguar Paw, who's red, will kind of need to save their card from 8, because 8 is now a pretty serious threat, locking something in. And if so, Midas can play in 5, and their card in 6 will also be safe. Jaguar Paw plays here, and Midas plays 5. And in the game, this was the follow-up, and there's a number of ways to tie this position. For instance, something like this just is a tie. Because if you take it, I always take back with the 7 down that the 6-6-7-2 can't deal with. And kind of the same thing over here, right? The 6-6-7-2 is never getting enough captures. So there are a number of ways to tie. I put the move in wrong. No, this card's, I think, supposed to be 7-1-4-7. My bad. So that actually doesn't work as cleanly. One sec. We'll reboot. I think it was 7-1-4-7. I could be wrong. It won't actually matter for our... No, it probably will matter for our game. Yeah, this position's much tougher to tie. So the big thing blue has going their way is they do have the same in 2. But if they take the same in 2 immediately, it looks like they lose to this, with the point that this is samed, plussed, and otherwise there's going to be that double capture, and of course this also leads to a big plus, because there's the plus threat in 4. So that loses, so I think you have to go 7 first. And I think, yeah, so it's got to be, I think this has got to be. Because the point is, if they take 5, you go up 6-4, and if they take 2, even if they combo, we have the combo back with a 7 facing out. So I think that's the key here. I think have to find 2, 7, 3, 7, and 7. As the game went, Midas actually made a pretty big mistake, but it wasn't punished here. The winning point being 6, 7, 5, 4 sets up 6, 7, 6, 7, 2 to have the combo on 5 from either 2 or 4. But, you know, moves are missed. It's fine. But I was looking at this game, and I was looking at this position, and I was thinking, what should red do? And I thought there were a bunch of pretty good options. There's some weird stuff here. There's some weird stuff here. For instance, this is a very weird idea. Does it work? I think it works. Yeah. Huh. There might be some defense to that. But I was thinking, what happens if you go in 1 and you split the board in 2, right? If we go for a formation. That move in 7 is very odd. Want to spend a while calculating that. Just saw the one idea of I can force them to have 7s to the left. What's the computer say? Alright, this position's a win for sure. What's the computer say here? Oh, wins. Cool. Well, I was looking at this move, though. And my point was, blue has no captures in the top right. So I know we're gonna run even in the top right. And in the bottom left, I know blue either we run even. If they don't capture anything, it's at least even for me. Or if they go in 4, I noticed any card they put in 4 that captured 1, I could combo back, right? Either of these cards is comboed back by 6, 6, 7, 2, either through plus or plus wall. So because of that, Because 6672 is guaranteed at least one capture in the bottom left, and because 3657 is guaranteed to go at least even in the top right, I knew this position had to be at least a tie. I didn't actually analyze any further, so I do not actually know if this is winning or tied. I don't know. But just looking at it, it seemed clear to me this has to be at least a tie and has good winning chances because I can split up those squares so clearly, right? And the reason I was drawn to this move rather than others is because this does not split it up so clearly. Suddenly blue has captures in 2, right? And also, I wanted to keep the 6672 to sweep these 2 squares, and the 3657 was my best card for these 2. So this seemed the best for that. It also sets up the plus in 4. There's a whole lot of reasons it's the most appealing. But I was looking there, just looking to how can I split up the game and make sure in both components of it, I have the advantage. Now here, given that we know 6672, if we look a little further, we now can see 6672 has to put up a plus in the bottom left, right? Any move in 4 by blue, it puts up a plus. Any move by 7, even if safe, gets comboed and turned out not to be safe because we set up that plus in 4. So that 6672 is putting up a plus in the left, which means if 3657 puts up a plus as well, we're going to win. And it looks to me pretty close to doing so. The only way it doesn't is if they start in 2. But our plus is too big. We're capturing at least 2 cards in the bottom left. So are we guaranteed plus 2 from the bottom left? I think we are. I think 6672 plays that good. I think this is a win. I'm going to check what the computer says. Yeah, the computer says this is a win. Because we are guaranteed to go at least even in the top and win at least 2 cards in the bottom left. And so that makes this a nice move, but it's also not one that's all that hard to calculate because we split up the board. One important thing about splitting up the board is the fewer captures they have, the easier it is to just kind of do this count of, okay, I'm guaranteed at least even in the top, and I'm guaranteed at least plus 2 in the left. And from there, we know it's winning. But even without spotting the plus 2, it's pretty easy to see. We're going to score at least even at the top. We're going to score at least plus 1 in the left. This seems like a good move. And would have been a winning play. And a straightforwardly one once you spot it. Though admittedly, the fact that you have to have that combo in 4 can be a little tricky to spot here. So let's look at another game. This is a Delial versus Turdz game. And we're putting in cards. Sorry for the dead time. That hand right. That hand is right. 6, 8, 9. Okay. Hopefully these hands are right. I did make a mistake in the last game putting in one of the hands. All right. Very interesting starting move from Delial in 9. Noting that Turdz' hand has this really big down issue such that a 2 facing up is only capturable by 3 of the cards out of the 5. Are these hands right? Sorry, just doing one last check. Okay. And also that there are a lot of things with an 8 up that the 5, 8, 7, 6 is just going to absolutely dominate. Turdz ends up going here, and Delial immediately goes in 8, seeing it's very hard for you to play in 6. I can play safely in 8, and it is difficult for you to play in 6, because this move gets, as said, comboed horribly. Now, the line continues, you probably have to look further, but for our purposes, looks horrible. And here, also looks pretty... Is this what happened? No. This move's probably okay. I want to play both these cards in 1 at the same time, because this one sets up 6, 9, 6, 3, and 2, but not in 4, and this one sets up 6, 9, 5, 5, and 4, but not in 2. Something like this. Blue has won there, yeah. So probably go here and say your 8's up can't do anything. One of these two cards here. It's probably a tie. Probably this one, because 6963 covers 3 really well. But probably isn't winning. So anyways, I think that's what should have been done. Turdz ends up going in 2. And again, we have these positions where we can set up a formation and we can just count, do we outscore them in these squares? Now, the preferable formation is going to be a T over a Z because the T has fewer cards available for them to attack. We have a locked-in card. It's a lot easier. Again, this is going to be a pretty straightforward one to do because blue has very few captures and there's no combo potential. And combo potential can really screw these kind of things up. And actually, that reminds me of a game I would like to add to this. Yeah. This is going to be 6 games long rather than the 5 I intended. Because it's in... We're going to give some examples at the end of when this is a little more complicated to do. But Delial has 3 cards he can put in 7. We kind of know he wants to hold on to 5, 8, 7, 6 because that sweeps the upward 8s so well. Of 6, 9, 5, 5 and 6, 9, 6, 3, importantly, neither of them can be comboed from 4. The obvious one to check is 6, 9, 5, 5 because downward power is going to matter for us. Again, when we see these are up-down connected squares, and the T, the base of the T, I guess the top of the T for how a T looks, but I think of it as the base is where the secured card is, which will be the card in 8. Directing towards that is going to be what matters, because the only way they can attack our cards is to go in 4 or 6, right? We know if they go in 1 and... Well, let's divide into paired squares. So, they potentially have 2 captures. They can capture in 6. Any capture they do in 6 are 5, 8, 7, 6 combos back. Now, if blue had a combo back in 1, this could be a problem, right? If something like this, if there was something that plus walled in 1, that would flip 2, would flip 3, would flip everything. Could potentially be a problem. Wouldn't be here, because 6, 9, 6, 3 has the same in 4, but could potentially be, right? You could imagine a world where that would be more complicated to check. Any card the opponent puts in 6, 5, 8, 7, 6 combos. Any card they put in 3, 5, 8, 7, 6 takes 5. 5, 8, 7, 6 is going to score +1. But here we have one of the key differences between something like a T and a Q. It scores +1, but it captures a card that can be interacted with from the other 2 paired squares 1 and 4. So it could be a line where we are guaranteed +1 from one side and +1 from the other, but they're both capturing that same card in 5. And you might think, then we're going to win +2, we're going to win 7-3, but we only win 6-4 because we can't take that card twice. Stuff like that is very easy to have miscounts when it's the same card being affected. Capturing that card in 5 is less valuable than capturing cards in other squares. But here, capturing that card in 5 is good enough, because you'll notice blue has no way to recapture that card from 4. So we know 5, 8, 7, 6 is going to be +1 on the right. What about on the left? 6, 9, 6, 3 is going to run -1 against any of their things with an 8 up. Their card with the 6 up, it does well against. If our opponent is foolish and goes in 1 rather than 4, it runs at least even, but it's going to be -1. So we could calculate this as a tie, and this is where it gets a little more complicated. Because how does 5, 8, 7, 6 do on the left? Well, 5, 8, 7, 6 on the left absolutely crushes 8, 3, 7, 8, which is the problem for 6, 9, 6, 3. But it doesn't have any captures against most moves, against exactly 8, 3, 7, 8, and 1. It has no captures against, but 6, 9, 6, 3 dominates there. So here we get to this thing where 5, 8, 7, 6 is going to kind of put up a plus on the right, or the only times it doesn't put up a plus on the left, the opponent has to make a move weak to our other card. And here's where it can be pretty easy to count out, but not necessarily clear. Here, though, the thing is, if they start over here, we can respond putting up a huge plus, right? Where can they go over here that gets the least minus? Probably something like this. And we're up 1, but they get the tie, right? So this is probably the trickiest thing they can do. The thing is, 6963 can sub in here. And now we win, right? So, how to say this right? We can't in this one simply divide up the two sides of the board and say I have this card for this part and this card for this other part. But we also can see they have no moves that immediately take advantage, right? 8378 here is really good if 5876 is out of our hand. It's really good here if 6963 is out of our hand. This move is really good against us if 5876 is out of our hand. So all of these things rely on a card being out of our hand. So we know our cards are pretty good in the sets of squares, but we also know they don't really have a first move. And sometimes this will turn out that they do in fact have a tie. And a game I miscalculated, one of the examples I'm going to show very shortly of when I thought this kind of counting made it a simple win, was because I had not accounted for this properly, right? That I thought I was getting enough pluses in different parts of the board to be winning, but I hadn't worked out quite the turn order. And here the turn order works really well. The game ended with this is our move, and we should see that the trick is this puts up +1, but they get the tie because our 6963 is dead. However, 6963 combos everything, and 5876 covers the 8s. There is this combo back. There was some combo potential in the position, which also makes it a little trickier, and Deli wins 6-4. So we can see there are a bunch of things making this trickier. One is 8629 and 3 is a potential combo, which did come up in the game. And another is that we can't quite split up the board as cleanly as we want to. And I think on average, it is easier to split up the board in a Q or a Z, because a Q or a Z, basically the only shared squares, right? If we turn this into a Z, this does not make sense. But the only square that both sides easily have access to is 5. Or if we made this a Q, the only square that both parts, 2 and 3 versus 4 and 7, have access to is 5. But in a T, and T's are really good because it's, there's a locked-in card, and because it's easier to have the relevant directions, right? Mostly you just need a lot of down power in a T like this. In a T, the cards have more access to the same things. And so I think it is easier in a T to miss something in these positions. Here, there is nothing to miss, and it's just a win. But you can see how it could be a little trickier. Let's show another Delial game. This is from Nephilim. Delial is using the hand I built for Nephilim. So congrats to me. What a powerful hand. It was fun because I haven't gotten to play my Nephilim game and probably won't get a chance, though there's still a couple days left. So it was nice to see my hand in action, or my intended hand, though I had a few cards I could sub in or out, and he went different directions than I think I would have. But immediately, immediately plays a starter that kind of shows how powerful just strong corners can be. The opponent only has 2 ways to capture it. Both use high-level cards, and both 1574 dominates. So very hard to approach. The opponent goes in 1, again, against a tough corner to meet. Going something weak in the opposite corner, as we saw in the first game, I think is very viable, though we're not going to see it work well. But this is a video which is about first turn play, because all these formations are dictated by first turn. Delial goes 8. Again, I expected a move in 4 or 7. I think these are the standard moves, but the opponent quickly went in 5. And the question is, what formation can we set up, and can we just calculate it out as we have pluses in these paired squares? I think the move's pretty obvious. We want to lock in 9. We have safety in 6. Qs are generally better if you have the locked in card than Zs. So we're definitely going to be looking at the Q here. And we can look. Do we have the top and bottom? And what's really interesting about this is our card for each might be different than you'd think, right? The 1574 looks more like a card for 2 and 3, and the 7864 looks more of a card for 4 or 7. But it actually doesn't work out that way. And we can look at it both ways. So let's assume that first. 1574 is our card for 2 and 3. Well, the only capture our opponent has is from 2. And we do capture that back. So we know 1574 has at least an even score up top. They can get to that a number of ways. They can play safely next to us, right? This way it grabs the card in 2. So we can see it's at least scoring even and often putting up +1. What about the left, 7864? Well, it is not really doable for them to... It's going to put up at least +1, but that +1 will be 1, which is a square the other side can interact with. So we could imagine a sequence like this. Though, of course, if they started in 7, we would take it with this and win that way, as we'll get to in a moment. But that would already be a clue that maybe 1574 is the card for the left. And let's think about it that way. If they go in 4 or 7, if they go in 4, they can take 5, but we will take 8. So we're going to go at least even, and again, 5 and 1 are the least valuable things to capture because they can be interacted with from the other side. So we run at least even against any move in 4. Any move in 7, we necessarily run at least even against because they don't capture anything. But in fact, the only thing we don't put up a plus against is 8383. So we're running at least even there. 7864 in the top absolutely crushes the 4A29 either way, which is wonderful, and has captures against anything that would capture. So 7864 is going to run at least even in the top. So we know with 1574 as our left card and 7864 as our top card, we're running at least even in both. So we know this is at least a tie, but this position is winning. And I guess the reason it is because one of their cards is overworked. So their only move on the left side of the board, right, that doesn't run negative against us, right? This move runs negative, we take them. This move runs negative, we take, right? Their only moves that don't immediately run negative to our card intended for that are 8383 here, which because it is comboed, doesn't work. Or 8383 here. The problem is they've taken the less valuable cards. And so we win very easily with this move when 7864 does dominate the top. Because what was the only thing 8764 wasn't running even against? 7864 wasn't running even against, or wasn't running a plus against. The only one was moves in 2 that capture 5. And they can't get double the value from capturing 5 twice. I feel like I'm not saying this super clearly. And again, it's sort of because calculation is hard. And because it's very specific, so it's hard to put it in general rules. And I'm sort of, as I said coming into the video, I'm coming in not entirely sure how to get at what I want to say, and sort of hoping that if I babble long enough, some kind of path will become clear. But we have these sets of squares, and we have our cards that are running at least even in each pair. And importantly, and this is a theme we saw in the last one too, our opponent has no first move. So it's that we have these nice paired squares, and our opponent doesn't have a start that runs us out, right? the moves that play well against 1-5-7-4, something like this, loses really hard to the other cards subbing in. Or something like this, which also does it, has the problem that they captured 5, which is just less valuable than locking in 8, because 5 can still be accessed by the top part of the board. And in the top part, they have nothing that can run even except moves that capture 5, right? 7-8-6-4 captures anything put in 3 and captures anything put in 2, so their only way to run even is this. And of course, against that, we now can see very easily 1-5-7-4 is going to dominate, because 5 just isn't as valuable to control. Okay. Got 2 more games, and now it's going to be times when the ending formation was miscalculated. When there was one of these formations, but something about it made it a little trickier, and it wasn't gotten right. And I think every single example so far, either the player was able to play quickly, all the Delial moves, which were correct, were played quickly. My winning move, I played very quickly as well. The Jaguar Paw Midas game, he went a different direction. It wasn't played quickly there. But generally speaking, these moves are able to be made more rapidly. And here's a game where I made a move quite rapidly. I was recording and talking, so actually you can check the video and probably find out that I didn't make it that rapidly. But I did sort of decide on it quickly and not seriously consider anything else. And it ended up not working. We had a start I thought was really strong for me, pretty favorable. And Piggyman, the very tough to beat, played this move, and it was just so hard for me to imagine that 8 wasn't immediately winning. I can go in 8, I'm safe, he has no combo in 6. He does have a plus in 4, but how much does that plus in 4 matter? All it does is capture. The 9-4-8-3 is never going to flip extra cards. So there's very little combo potential. There's also a plus wall in 3, but the 6-8-9-2 is never going to flip extra cards if it's comboed from 3. So none of the combos matter for him. And I saw my 4-2-9-9 dominates the right. I'm currently up 1, and it's definitely going to score at least +1. On the left side, anything he puts in 1, the 5-8-5-7 can take. And if he goes in 4, only 7-7-2-9 cannot be taken by 5-8-5-7. But against 7-7-2-9, I can take that with 4-2-9-9, and suddenly I'm putting up a plus on the right. Because 5-8-5-7, once the 7-7-2-9 is out of his hand, puts up a plus on the right because it can capture any of the cards he puts in 6. And if he goes in 3, it can capture 5, so it's going to go at least even. So it seemed to me pretty clear I'm up 6-4, and I'm definitely going at least even in both sides of the board. This has got to be winning. And so I just assumed this was winning. And I was wrong. And there's only one save, and Piggy found it, because Piggy is fantastic and very difficult to beat. And I think it's a really good save, but you can also, I think, see why my heuristics, and I think these are useful heuristics, the kind of dividing up the board, saying, what's the current score? I'm up 1. Am I going to get a minus on the right? No. Am I going to get a minus on the left? No. So I'm definitely going to finish up at least +1, and that's winning. I don't need to win by the biggest margin. And I think that's a useful way to think, but here it didn't capture the specifics of the situation. And feel free to pause and think about, how did Piggy save this position? But the answer is, I actually have something in my hand that is overworked. Something in my hand that's overworked. And it is based on the key problem of the one move that was potentially tricky for me to meet was 7-7-2-9 in 4. Because 5-8-5-7 does put up a minus in the left against that. But can it ever come up when the 4-2-9-9 is out of my hand? Because I have 5-8-5-7 for the left and 4-2-9-9 for the right. But the one move that has a chance to put up a plus against 5857 over here does not put up a plus against 4299, and 5857 is now good enough to grab the win because it can overpower the card in 5. And it can overpower a 4 or 3 facing up. But Piggy switches up the order. He starts here. And we hit the problem. Because if I use the 4299, suddenly I don't have an answer to 7729. And if I don't use it, 4299 actually isn't good enough over here because it has no threat on 5. And so I split the board up. I saw I'm running even in both sides. But actually, I end up running -1 over on the left because he manages to achieve the 7729 scenario. And there's no win. I will also note, if I go somewhere like here, he doesn't... there he plus walls. So, but, you know, even if he didn't plus wall, if he just captured this, this doesn't have the capture on both sides. And if I do it with this card, I don't capture 5, so that would be ridiculous. So we can check other lines, but usually in these structures, you know, sometimes there's far corner plays, but usually you're just going to respond in the connected square. And we found a nice save. The 4299 was just slightly overworked. It was my card for the right, but it was just needed for this one square on the left. And he found a way where, and this is the only move that does so, where it was needed in both spots and wasn't good enough. This move also may come to mind, but I take it with plus wall. So it has to be exactly this move to get the tie. Very nicely spotted. And one more, which will show this kind of thinking not quite leading us to the right result in a complicated position. And yes, and again, I do think this is useful general thinking, but I want to kind of sort of go over that I think it's useful and where I think it can lead you astray. And it's usually when a card is just a little more overworked than you think it is. When a card seems to be, it's just covering this side, but needs to do one little thing over there, and the other seems like it can back up cover the first side, but maybe there's just one little thing it can't handle there. And if they can be strung together, a tie can be managed. So this is a game I've already shown. It's a game between Delial and Akiyama. Delial plays a great move in 5. Excellent move. Definitely the best move in the position. But I've talked about this game before. And Delial plays in 7. What's going on? Well, down is the direction that matters, because down is the direction from which Akiyama can attack Deli's cards. Therefore, Delial has kept a really good down power and turned the game into a T, such that even though Akiyama has the secured card in 5, it is easy to see where Deli's plus comes from, right? If Akiyama goes in 1, they will not have a capture, and Delial will run at least even with either of his cards, and the current score is tied. And note, most of the cards Delial could potentially put up a plus against. If Akiyama goes in 4, he has 2 ways to capture, and both of those and the other card are all dominated. By 7-3-A-8. All of it's dominated there. So there is no move in 4, that doesn't get comboed back. So 7-3-A-8 is our card for the left, and 7-3-A-8 is going to run at least even, and the only cards it runs even against are these moves in 1. Okay, what about the right? Well, there's a capture in 3, but it is comboed back very hard by 8-5-A-6. And there's only the one capture in 3, and anything else, 8-5-A-6, can also overpower, and anything put in 6 has either doesn't capture, or if it does, we run at least even against, and if we hold on to the other card, we put up a big plus. My computer may run slow, I just mistakenly opened another thing. One sec. So it seems like we're running at least even against everything and putting up potential pluses. The only things we don't are if they can sequence something over here combined with exactly this move. Those are the only ways where it seems like we're not getting stuff. But the problem is, against those sequences, our cards switch in value, right? Because this move is horribly punished by this. Jesus, clicking bottom things too much. And because this move is horribly punished by this. So there's not actually a way to sequence them. Those are the two moves they need, but then we just switch cards, which card we're using for which part of the board, and none of it works for them. So this really looks like a win. And playing quite quickly, not thinking there was any hope, Akiyama played in 4, Deli played in 1, and now very clearly Delial is winning. He can capture anything in 6. There's no captures. He's already up 6-4. He's going to win, at least 6-4. This is the best that can be done. But there is a tie here. And the reason there's a tie is because there is a plus on 5. And we've seen in a T before in the Delial Turdz game, we saw that Turdz had a plus wall from 3 on 2, but that wasn't enough to save it. But here, there is a little more combo potential with that plus in 5. We got a plus on the card in 5. And importantly, while this card can be comboed back, it doesn't combo back 5. That's part 1 of the save here. Part 2 of the save here is going to be that this card in 5, if it is comboed, potentially could flip 2 as well, which could flip a whole bunch of things. So we're going to need a sequence where we have this setting off a combo that flips 5 to flip 2, because 2 also cannot be taken back. So how do we do that? Well, one way to think about doing that would be, I go here, they combo, I have the plus, and they take enough back. Shoot, doesn't work, right? But we do notice we did get that card in 5 and 2. Now, 2 is already red. We didn't really need to flip it and be comboed, right? So what if we did it a slightly different way? What if we were weak to 2, such that the potential combo would grab our card as well? Because this was only 1 away from tying. We don't need to capture that. There's no need to capture that. Now we can see how it works. Because when we combo, it grabs the cards in 5, 2, and 1. This flips back 2 cards, but that's not enough to win. Of course, if they play this way, then they don't even get to combo back, and they lose. If they try to leave both squares open, they don't have a good way to set up their own threat in 4, so we can just go in 6. A move like this is very much terrible, because we just go in 6 and we win. And so this is the very sneaky tie, but you can see why a very good player would not seriously consider it, because the position looks so hopeless on both parts of the board, right? The cards are putting up at least even scores if we just divide, 7-3, A8 has the left, 8-5, A6 has the right. They're already going at least even, and when you start looking at any specifics, you see, the only cards they're not putting up pluses against, the other card absolutely destroys. And so this really looks like a win, and I think is going to be one in practice a huge percentage of the time, because most players will not check everything here, because the position is so clearly hopeless. But when there's a combo on 5, and when that card in 5 can affect other squares, when there is that little bit of combo potential, it can be that this kind of thinking doesn't work. And so here there is the brilliant save, 8-8, 5-5, and 3. I guess that's all I had to talk about. Just 6 games I thought were interesting and were all out of formations, and I've been thinking of doing more stuff focusing on playing certain types of formations well. But I do think you're probably not going to have time to calculate everything, especially if you're choosing to go into the formation, right? Let's say you have time to calculate everything here in 3 or 5 minutes, but you probably don't have time to calculate everything here. This is appealing. This is appealing. You know, this is appealing. Maybe this one isn't appealing, but maybe it is. This is appealing. This is appealing. You know, there's so many formations you can enter that it's going to be very difficult to check them all in 3 to 5 minutes, especially if you're checking exhaustively. And I think basically you won't be able to do it. So you're going to have to rely on some heuristics and seeing the game in terms of, I split up the board, I have this card for this part and this card for this part, can be a very fast way to get close to the correct evaluation. But these last two games, one which I screwed up and one which Akiyama screwed up, I think both show... And incidentally, Delial is winning here. This move did give up the win. But again, in practice, he's going to win the game so much anyway. It's fine. But very good players screwing these up. But what is needed to make there be that advantage? To make there be that chance where second turn can survive, even though this card works here, this card works there reasoning is basically sound. What can throw it off? And the two things we saw that can throw it off are, one, a card can be overworked. A card can be needed in too many places. And also in the game against Piggy, my 4299 was completely dead in 4. It was really good in 1, 3, and 6, but it was dead in 4. And so he found a way to both overwork it where it was needed in too many squares, but also if I tried to hold on to it, there was still a square for it to be dead in, right? If instead of a 4299, it had been a 4499, it would have been a winning position. There would have been no squares, it was dead, and any situation where I could hold on to it, I would be clearly winning. So one thing is, if there's a card they are over-reliant on, but is not good for every square, that can be a time when this calculation goes wrong. And the other is when there is combo potential. Because the raw count is sort of treating the game as a non-combo game. And usually these formations don't have significant combo setup, right? Because if there was significant combo action in 6 here, we probably wouldn't be making the move in 7 because it's so obvious it wouldn't work kind of thing. But here is a place where the combo potential is kind of masked in a way that makes the combo save very difficult to see, but practically possible. And so if you're on the defensive side of this, and it looks like the count is losing, the ways you might be able to tie, do you have a plus somewhere? Anywhere. Here, the plus is hideous, right? This plus looks so bad. And of course, doing it immediately is so bad, but it is the saving grace of the position. Specifically, having a plus or a plus wall or something that affects 5 is going to be the most relevant place to have it, because that's the place that can potentially hit the rest of the board. And I think these are the main ways that this kind of counting doesn't work. But again, I think the counting is really useful, and I think it's a big reason why playing in structures can be effective, because most players are not going to calculate perfectly with 5 moves left or with 4 moves left. And so playing to positions where you are able to, it's red's turn with 5 moves out, be like, yeah, this position looks horrible for them. Even though it's wrong in this case, or there is a tie. It still is horrible for them and you're probably going to win. And you have this shortcut to not having to check absolutely everything when you're also trying to compare to these other desirable looking moves. I think this was the win. Yeah. And let's actually look at this, because we should again be able to count. Here, again, I think 8-5 A6 is probably for the right side of the board. It's running at least even over there. And 6-8 9-5, any card is running even on the left, because blue has no captures over there. So no card can put up a minus. Here, blue has no combo play, so there is no chance of a save that way. But we're only running even in both sides of the board. So we do have to at least check a few things. And so one thing to check is, first of all, their capture puts up a huge minus because we combo them. And this time there's no combo back. So in fact, their only way to run even on that part of the board, or to play safely, is this, and that drops 5. So actually, they're pretty clearly putting up -1 on the right. They have no recapture on the left. This is just a win. There's nothing to do here. because we have +1 in one part, we have even in the other, it's a tied score, it's game over. There is no combo potential, and there is no overworked card, because we are always putting 8-5-A6 in 3 or 6. That will always put up at least +1, and 6-8-9-5 in the others will always put up at least even. So we could, in fact, with the kind of heuristics talked about here, we could say we can check the squares, count it out, this looks like a win, and then go, okay, is any of my cards overworked? In this case, they can't be, right? Because we know there's no situation where like, the 8-5-A6 usually is good in 3 or 6, but against this one play of theirs, we'd have to use the 6-8-9-5 over there, or vice versa, and that throws everything off, right? That's not happening here. We're very locked into which card affects which part of the board. And then secondarily, is there any combo potential to come back here? And there are no combos for blue. Blue has no combos in the position, especially not any on 5, so this is just a win. What about this move? This seems another possibility to check. Now we know 8-5-A6 is a better sweeper because we've just given up something over here. So now we're running even over here, right? Because we get 5, and they can run even over here. So I suspect with either of 3-7-7-A in 3 or 7-6-A5 in 4, I'm not sure, maybe both orders work, maybe they don't. I'll have the AI tell me, because otherwise, while I'm trying to show something, this is easy to calculate. Here, I'm not actually going to do it. I'm going to have the computer tell me. I admit this is not very convincing, but I also don't want to spend like 30 seconds going silent making sure of things. And the computer does say both these moves tie. These are the only 2 ties, but they both tie. And it makes sense why they tie. They're the only moves that go even in their part of the board. And so 8-5-A6 would be a tying move. 7-3-A8 is a winning move. 6-8-9-5-7 is a tying move, but it's so close to a win. And it takes great resilience to find the tie against that. And so, yeah, I think with this summary, I finally kind of got to sort of what I was trying to say about these positions. And I think looking for T's, S's or Z's, and Q's, they're really viable positions to be able to think of them in parts in your head and not have to calculate all that specifically, but just see, yes, 8-5-A6, dominant up-down sweeper. And it's also easy to know what cards you want left, right? Because in this position, so in a T, you generally want the power facing down. Down's going to be the most important direction because that faces towards the base of the T. In a Q, it's a little trickier, just putting in random moves. That's not a Q. Putting in random moves to get a Q. Because the card that's going to be good in 7 and 8, right, is generally going to be one facing upright, but probably wants some left power too. And something that's mostly upright is probably not going to be very good in 3 or 6. So one advantage of the T is that cards that are good for one side of the board are likely to be good for the other. While in a Q, you're going to need 2 kind of tailor-made cards for it. A Z is a little trickier in some ways because the requirements for the different parts are different. Unlike a T, there isn't a clear base card, right? In the T, the base was 2, and directing down to face that is generally the power you want. Here, looks like we're probably going to want something a bit upright for the left side and a bit down left for the right side. But they're going to be a little less redundant, and they don't have the same base to target. I feel I ended really well like 5 minutes ago, and now I'm sort of meandering again, so I should probably cut it off. It's all interesting stuff. I'll try to conclude one last time. These formations allow you to see the board in terms of paired squares, and by sort of checking them and seeing, do I put up a plus, do I put up a minus there, and what is the current score, you can do very quick approximations of calculation that will usually be correct and are much easier than actually checking every move. And I hope I've given examples that show that in games with good players. Every single player I've shown is a very good player to an absolutely fantastic player. These are not, wins against weak players. These are... I probably haven't shown a video with this many games with this high an average quality of player. And it is a very quick shortcut to be able to effectively calculate. And it does have times when it's not going to work completely, but I think it is useful, and I think it is useful to know when those times are. And I hope I've done a decent job of identifying that. So, I guess... Geez, I went on a while. Ooh, we'll cut it off exactly at the hour mark. Bye.